Amiga, do you ever feel caught between two worlds? You cherish your cultural background, but sometimes it clashes with the realities of raising a family in modern America. You might feel pressured to fulfill traditional expectations, yet you crave a life that allows you to be your true, authentic self. If you're a Latina mom nodding your head right now, I see you and I get it. Balanced Motherhood is more than your average Mami coaching program. It's a supportive comunidad designed specifically for you. I understand the unique challenges you face navigating between generations and culturas while forging your own path as a mama. Stop feeling like you have to choose between your roots and your future. Balanced Motherhood empowers you to create a life that celebrates your heritage, embraces your motherhood journey, and prioritizes your own happiness. Spots are limited. Don't miss out on this opportunity to connect with a supportive community and create a more balanced life. Visit the link in the show notes to join the waitlist for the next Balanced Motherhood cohort. I can't wait to meet you. Hola, hola! You've been through it before, so a second birth will be a breeze, right? Maybe, maybe not. Well, I had my second baby boy in May 2023 and have been wanting to do an episode about my childbirth experience the second time around. As a mommy of two, I'd like to say that my second birth experience was so different than my first. If you're currently pregnant with your second or third or more, or if you just want to hear about my birth story, this episode will share all the details as well as how you can prepare for your next childbirth as a second-time mommy. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Viva la Mami podcast. I am your host, Jessica Cuevas. I am a mother of two on a mission to help redefine the meaning of motherhood as a modern Latina mom. Motherhood can be a complex journey, interwoven in two identities that often make us feel ni de aquí ni de allá. Viva la Mami is committed to providing you with knowledge, tools, and support to navigate the challenges and triumphs of motherhood as Latina moms. On the show, we'll be discussing culturally relevant topics that will help inform and empower you in whichever season you are in on your motherhood journey. We'll be joined by Latina moms, experts and professionals who can offer advice, practical tips, relatable stories, and honest conversations. So bring your cafecito as I invite you to be a part of this space as we create comunidad about the exciting and challenging parts of being a mommy. Ahora, vámonos. When I was pregnant with Dee, my first child, I had no idea what to expect about, anything about childbirth, really. So childbirth for me seemed very mysterious. In a way, I was naive about what childbirth was going to be. And even though so many women that I know, whether if it's in my family or my friends, childbirth is sort of kept a secret. And so even with my family, all what I would hear is, pues hasta que pases por esto, así es como vas a saber. And I wanted to know more. And it might have been because perhaps it can be traumatic for some folks, or they probably say the very general part of childbirth without any details. And it might just be me and my personality where I want to know every single detail in order for me to really know. I guess I didn't ask questions, or I wanted to know further because perhaps I wanted to get surprised. I don't know. But with Dee, my first, I tried to prepare as much as I can. Even though I did what I could to prepare the first time, I'd say that the second time around was so different. So even though I came in with the second pregnancy and second childbirth, I came in with more experience than the first. It was still very different. And it is so true what they say. Every single pregnancy, every single childbirth is going to be different. And so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to share my childbirth story. But some of y'all had reached out via DMs on Instagram with a couple questions. And so I just wanted to give you all this time to answer a couple of your questions. But on top of that, I'm also going to share tips as far as with how you can prepare for your second childbirth experience as well. I do want to put out a disclaimer that this is my story only. And so just because this was a whole different birth experience than my first, it doesn't mean that yours will be the same as well. In fact, a lot of moms that I know had a similar birth experience from their subsequent pregnancies and childbirth experiences from their first. And even though both pregnancies were different, and I explained to you all in previous episodes, but my childbirth experiences were very different. My first childbirth and my second childbirth were very different. So now that I put this out there, what can you anticipate the second time around? And so let's dive into this conversation. So the first question that someone asked me was, will the second baby come earlier? And so really with my experience and compared to my first childbirth experience, this time was much earlier. D was born 1 day before his due date, and that was because I got induced. I thought that I was in labor, but I don't think I was. And so because I stayed in the hospital, I would say one of the downfalls of having a hospital birth is that they may ask you or even push you to induce your baby. And because I was already in labor, I wouldn't say active labor, I was just in early labor, I guess, for a very long time, that my midwife was like, you've been tired here. This is an option. You have the choice of making the decision whether if you want to be induced. And so I did it. But now that I think back about my first childbirth experience, I think that I would have had D after his due date. However, with M, he was born 9 days early and I was not induced. This literally came so quick. Luckily, I had just packed my bag. If you follow me on Instagram, I did post on what is in my hospital bag. And I posted that reel a couple days after M was born because literally the day before M was born, I had just finished packing my bag because I'm like, oh, I still have close to 2 weeks. It should be fine. No, he was born 9 days early. And so really the reality of this is that there's no prediction that you can make when you'll be going into labor, whether if it's your first time or the fifth. Each and every women's experiences, even based on what I know, is that baby will be born whenever they're ready. Or sometimes we have to trust the process, and maybe you have preeclampsia, or maybe you just have to deliver early, or maybe your body wants to deliver early. And so that's something that we just need to be open, whether if it's your first time or you are an experienced mama, know that baby can come early after your firstborn, but it may not. So it just depends. Another question that was asked was your second labor faster and easier? And this second time around, yes. With D, I was in labor for about 20 hours, excluding pushing. And luckily, I pushed him for like 30 minutes, I believe. It felt like that at least. Maybe it was like 2 additional hours. I don't know. But this time around, active labor started immediately. I was having Braxton Hicks a lot sooner and a lot more profound this time around. And so the day before, I was like, am I in labor? Am I having contractions? But then I wasn't really counting the time. It might be the second childhood syndrome, where I was like, I don't know if there are contractions. I'm not even going to look at the app. I'm just going to trust the process. And so it wasn't until May 26, 2023 at 1 a.m. I woke up to go to the bathroom. And after using the bathroom, I felt this immense pressure. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to have this baby. And I thought that this was like the first part of labor, that early labor stage. And I woke up Alex and I was like, Alex, I think I'm in labor. I don't know. And he was like, okay, well, let's count in between your contractions. Let's just see if you are in labor. But literally, I kid you not, I couldn't even talk. And from what my doula mentioned and from childbirth classes that I've taken, if you cannot even speak like and have a conversation, that means that you got to go to the hospital. So what we did was we called our doula, we called my midwives, and they were like, you need to come to the hospital. And being that it was 1:30 a.m., Dee was with us. You know, we didn't even anticipate this. And so I had to call my mom. And luckily my mom, because she's a mom, she has that instinct. She wasn't asleep. She was just like thinking about me. Ya presentía that I was probably in labor. And so they rushed to our house. Once they got there, we rushed to the hospital. I don't even remember the car ride to the hospital. All what I remember is that I was holding the handle up on the door and I was just like squeezing it. And as soon as we got to the hospital, they put me in triage and they like put me into the room immediately. I had a birth plan and I wanted a natural labor. So they had a birthing suite available for anyone who wanted to have an unmedicated birth. And luckily that room was available. So I was like, yes. But honestly, I don't even remember getting there. I don't remember even getting into the room. I don't remember them checking my heart pressure, drawing my blood. I don't remember anything. All what I remember was I was like, where's my doula? Luckily, my doula was on the way. And by the way, I have Mr. M here. He's feeding right now. I was like, where's my doula? Luckily, she was on her way. And the second request that I had was, I want to be put on the tub. And so they put me in the tub and it was the most relaxing experience. And as soon as I got into the tub, my doula showed up and that's when she took a picture of us. Because that was like the only time when I felt more relaxed, I felt more present. I realized like, okay, now that I feel a little bit more at ease, I think it was the water maybe. I was like, now I can move on with this childbirth experience. Well, I felt very hot and I vomited. And my midwife was like, that is a good sign. That means that your body is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so I was like, what is this? And then I just had this excruciating pain. I was sweating and I was like, take me out of this tub. I had to go to the bathroom. And once I went to the bathroom, I was like, my back hurts. I couldn't even like talk. I just remember squinting my eyes. And so they gave me a birth ball and I was on all fours on the bed. Luckily, they had like this queen size bed. So it felt very like home. This birthing suite was pretty amazing. They had all different types of tools and ways in which you can have a natural birth. And so I got on all fours on the bed with the birthing ball and I was just like pushing. And it's just so wild to me that my own body told me to just do this on my own. And my midwife's like, oh, she's pushing, get things ready. And my doula was just there to like calm me, to remind me of like why I'm here. Alex was just being there and being such a great support system. I don't remember even saying him anything. He was just there, and having his presence really gave me just the sense of security and the sense of courage, even that we're about to have a second baby, that this little human being is going to be with us for the rest of our lives. And it was just a very special moment, being just everything that I did to that point was just how beautiful childbirth is. I did what I had to do in terms of my preparation, but I trusted the process. I trusted I trusted my baby to let me know when he was ready. And by that time when I was pushing, I'm like, this baby is ready to conquer the world. And so I felt kind of uncomfortable being on all fours with the birthing ball. And so I was like, I don't want this birthing ball. I just want to push. And I kind of laid on my right side. And that's how I birthed him. I pushed for like maybe 5 minutes. I don't even remember. But my doula was like, that was a quick time. And I pushed him and he was born. I did feel the ring of fire, like how many people say that it burns, it hurts. I did feel it, but it wasn't as intense as I thought it was. I just remember was squinting my eyes and I saw like this spark in my vision with me. Like I just saw like, I can't even describe it. That's just how difficult it is to describe childbirth. And maybe that's why no one tells you really like the full picture, because it's such a blur now that I think about it. But I do remember squeezing my eyes and seeing like flashes of light. And then I felt like this gush coming out and M was born. And I felt him. I heard him cry. We heard him cry. And it was just an amazing experience. And so yeah, like it's wild to think that this whole, like the second labor went so fast. Between the time that I woke up, which was at 1 a.m., to the time that he was born at 4:53 a.m. So it was a 3-hour labor. And technically, even though I was in the early stages of labor at my sister's birthday on May 25th, the day before, I thought that they were Braxton Hicks. They might have been contractions, but maybe they were inconsistent, or maybe my body just was like, I'm ready. M was like, I'm ready. And within this short amount of time of 3 hours, it's wild to think like how fast my labor went. In terms of it being easy, I would say it was easy for me just because I didn't have any interventions. Again, I trusted the process. And so I would say that this labor was much more quicker and easier for me. And so one of the things that I would say for the most part for moms who are in their second or subsequent pregnancies is to go to the hospital or call your doula or midwife if you're having an at-home birth much sooner than later, because things can go quickly. And this is based on anecdotes, based on people that I know that had their second or third pregnancy, that childbirth goes a lot quicker. But again, it all just depends on your baby and your body. Another question that I had in my DMs was, how did your body change after childbirth? And so this was something that my midwife had told me. Your body remembers through muscle memory. So my body was able to remember when I got pregnant. My body remembers what to do after that. And so that in itself, I feel like my body knew that this wasn't its first rodeo. Being that my body remembered what childbirth was like, I did not tear. This time around, I did not tear, and it was amazing because I didn't have any stitches. Yay. But I think I would say that I was preparing myself. I did do these perineal massages, and it is true. If you do these perineal massages, the chances of you tearing is minimal. Whereas with D, I tore, and it was the second degree tear, which is kind of in between. But that was because I didn't even hear or know about perineal massages. In addition that my body remembers about going into childbirth was the initial part of breastfeeding went much more smoothly. And I think it's because I also felt a little bit more wiser this second time around than the first time, because I remember the sensation. I remember that If in case baby doesn't latch, well, I have to seek a lactation consultant. And M didn't latch right away like D did. But what we did was that we fed him through a spoon. And so I was able to express colostrum and we fed him through the spoon. Whereas if D wouldn't have latched right away, I would probably be like, I don't know what to do. And maybe I wouldn't have sought help immediately. And so I think with this particular part of my breastfeeding journey, it was a lot different and a lot smoother. So if y'all want to listen to my breastfeeding experience this time around, let me know. I'm more than happy to do another episode about that. The only downside that I would say about my body changing after this second childbirth was that my body took much longer to recover. And in fact, I think it's still taking a longer time. I'm experiencing lower back pain. And being that this is my second time around, I went with a pelvic floor physical therapist. So shout out to Lena and Evelyn because they were very vital in my preparation towards childbirth and even after in the postpartum process. If you want to learn a little bit more about the benefits of going with the pelvic floor physical therapist, listen to episode 37. I interview Jessica Kerr, who is a pelvic floor physical therapist, and she talks a lot about the benefits of going with a PT specifically for your pelvic floor health. But regardless of when and to what extent you experience changes in your body, remember that childbirth is a major physical event. And so your body, even though, yes, it does incredible work, it is normal that it could probably take longer to recover the second time around. And so it is natural for you to even look and feel different. I for sure look a lot different. I'm a little heavier this time around, but I'm also giving myself grace and allowing myself just the ample time to bond with my baby, to be present with them, with both D and M, because right now we're going through a lot of changes, a lot of transitions. And so, yeah, each person will have their own unique timeline for recovery based on their individual circumstances. So I know that right now I'm focusing on them, and hopefully much sooner, maybe once M turns 6 months, I will actually start refocusing on myself and my overall well-being. Now that I answered a couple questions that were sent via DM on Instagram, I'm going to share a couple tips so that you can prepare for your second childbirth. So the first tip that I have is don't assume you are an expert because you experienced it before. I thought that by me doing this childbirth all over again, I thought that I was going to be much wiser and much more experienced. And even though I did trust the process, I did recognize that a lot of things are out of my control, I also had to do things all over again. Like I took a prenatal class because yes, even though D and M are 2 years apart from each other, I had D in different times. He is a pandemic baby. So I had him still when people were home, when there were some very heavy COVID specific restrictions, whereas with M, things were very loose. And so how does that look like? And so we just wanted to re-educate ourselves, but in a more contextual sense, given the times that we lived in compared to my pregnancy with D. Another tip that I have is that continue to go to routine visits. And if your body tells you something is off, listen to your body. Even though it is our second, third, fourth, fifth rodeo, whatever pregnancy you're currently in, this doesn't mean that you are the expert. Again, we need to count on our professional experts. Each and every pregnancy is different. Therefore, our body is going to react differently. Don't assume that, oh, maybe I experienced this before, or, oh, it's probably normal. That oftentimes happens with our cultura, but know that you need to lean in with the professional experts like your OB or your midwife. That way you can get your questions answered. Another tip that I have is to consider going for childbirth classes. That's something, again, that we did just because we wanted to re-educate ourselves a little bit more. In a way, it felt like it was some time for review for us. And so if your hospital or doula or midwife offers childbirth classes, consider going to those. You never know if you're going to use any of those tips, or you never know if you'll ever experience any of the topics that were discussed. Another tip that I have is hire a doula. This time around, my doula helped me throughout the entire process, from prenatal to even postpartum. With D, because of COVID and at that time people weren't vaccinated, I just wanted to make sure that my doula was safe and healthy, as well as us. And so we only utilized her virtually with D, but this time with M, considering that the majority of people were vaccinated and everything, we were like, you know what, we should utilize a doula. And it is true what they say. There's nothing like having a birthing support with you. Even though Alex was with me, I still wanted another person who brought mindfulness towards it, because even though Alex was present with me, I also didn't want him to carry on the burden of the emotional heaviness that can bring with childbirth. And so that's one of the reasons why I had my doula with us, and she's wonderful. Shout out to Selena. And I really loved her presence. I love the intentionality that she had with this second childbirth experience. And the last tip that I have with you all is to be open about the unexpected and trust the process. I have to be honest with you, I was a lot more anxious this time around and nervous because I had already experienced it before. And also it was really hard for me not to compare, because I was like, well, if this happened to me the first time, it should happen to me this time. And so I felt that at the end of my pregnancy, I had to change my mindset and remember that this pregnancy and childbirth experience is unique, because this baby is unique. This individual is unique. The same way as our kids' personalities are different from one to the other, that means that this childbirth experience will be very unique and different. And so these are all the tips that I have for you. I know that they're very brief and general, but if you do want me to focus on a specific part of my childbirth experience or even postpartum, like my breastfeeding journey, let me know, because I am thinking about having another episode of my situation right now about having 2 kids under 3 and how that transition is going, and how our transition was from having 1 kid to 2 kids, because there's a lot to uncover there. But in the meantime, I have one question for you all, and that is, how different was your second childbirth experience? Let me know. Feel free to DM me on Instagram, or feel free to send me an email at podcast@vivalamami.com, and that way we can chat. I'm always open to do that. And so thank you all for listening to my childbirth experience. It feels so good to just let it out there, because I've been wanting to do an episode like this. And so thank you all for giving me the space and the time to listen. Thank you for tuning in to the Viva la Mami podcast. If you like this episode, make sure to leave a review and write what episode really resonated with you. If you really loved it, share it on social media or with an amiga. As always, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening. Make sure to follow me at Viva la Mami on Instagram or visit vivalamami.com. Please note the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be replaced by your healthcare provider nor taken as professional advice.